So thank you all for being here. Thank you, panelists, for being here. I really appreciate it. And I know everyone on the call appreciates it. That's why they're all here too. And we're going to get started just by, getting to know who you each are. And one of the things I like to ask is, before we even get to know what your business is, tell me your name, maybe where you're from, and then also what one word would you use to describe your business?
Yeah, so I can go ahead and start. Hi, y'all. My name is Kimberlee Ward, and I am pretty much from Colorado. I was born in California and raised out here in Colorado in Aurora for most of my life. Currently, I work full-time as an academic advisor, so I'm doing the whole work from home switch thing and meeting with students over the phone and whatnot, so this is definitely good practice. And one word I would use to describe my business is intention, and so you will hear me use that word a lot. And my business is Eternal Balance Candles.
That's awesome. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
I can go next. My name is Julie Clockston. I am a doctor of social work and also a licensed clinical social worker. And I am sort of a jack of all trades, I would say. I sort of have lots of different businesses, but one of the main things that I do is I have a therapy practice where I work with individuals who experience trauma, but also I've sort of niched myself in working with individuals who are living with eating disorders, grief and loss, and individuals who are seeking to recover from psychological abuse. And so I do that. I'm also a disability specialist. I've worked with the population of individuals diagnosed with developmental and intellectual disabilities for about 26 years now. And so I am about all things mental health. I believe that every single animal, every single human has mental health, and that we should be able to access mental health care, and that it's detrimental to our entire whole being, to our entire wellness, for all of us to take care of our mental health and to receive the supports that we need. Did I answer everything, or was there something else?
What one word would you use to describe your business?
Eclectic.
Eclectic, like that.
Yeah, it's eclectic.
And then I'll actually go back to Kim, Elyse, I'm sorry, before we go to you. But Kim, will you go ahead and just describe what your business is?
Yes, so I have Eternal Balance Candles, and that's with the focus on where appearance and aroma meet intentional living. So I'm really thinking about folks' mental health and how are they living their lives each day, and how can I make sure that they are pausing, make sure that they are really taking care of themselves with all the demands that we have on ourselves as a society and the stressors that come into our lives. And so I have a product that is modern and looks luxurious, but I also match that with unique fragrances, and then matching that with intentional living. So it has a little quote on it that says, breathe fully, live intentionally.
Awesome. And then Elyse, how about yourself? Who are you and where are you from? What one word would you use to describe your business, and what is your business?
Awesome. Thank you, Sydney, again for hosting this virtual session. I think a month ago we were not expecting it. So thank you for coordinating all this time, and for the folks who are taking now the time to be here with our session. I'm so excited to be here. So my name is Elyse Sundita, and I'm originally born in the Bay Area and grew up in Hawaii. And for the past almost 12 years, I've been here in Denver, and I'm about to take flight again to Oregon. We'll see how that goes. But for right now, I'm just enjoying the time here. And my business is Diwata Knits, and basically it is a online community to guiding folks into the mindful, tangible practice of knitting into their power. And the one word that describes my business is power.
Awesome. I love that. And
Nice to meet you.
feel
Lovely
free
to meet
to
you.
feel free to if you're listening in, to type in questions as we go along if something pops up. That's what the chat box is for, and we'll be checking it periodically. So I'm going to just dive right in. Why did you start your business? What made you say, oh, this is a business that's needed? Or was it more of, this is something I want to do? What made you start? Elyse, since you finished last, we'll start with you first.
Okay, thank you. So I originally started this business to give warmth and love for folks who really enjoy handmade and sustainable knitted products. And I recognized that knitting products wasn't gonna, one, sustain me for a lifestyle. And I recognized I wanted to go into the deeper why. And now I'm switching gears, and I want folks and my fellow goddesses. Diwata in Tagalog actually means goddess or muse. And I want to help guide them and step into their power with this tangible, mindful practice. And honestly, right now, I believe that the knitting and community aspect of it is what is needed right here, right now. Thank you.
Kim, how about you? Let's have you go next.
Yeah, so I started Eternal Balance Candles because one thing that's important to me is mental health. I'm someone myself who deals with depression, and I will say I deal with depression on a daily basis, even if I'm not necessarily in a depressive episode, as I have dealt with depression since high school. I'm now 28. And I wanted to approach the conversation from a unique perspective. And so majority of people will tell you that they like candles, but I wanted people to have an experience with them. And so whether that's through intention or affirmations or, setting goals, I wanted people to think about those things and how can those things be shaped in order to improve their mental health. And so I'm not definitely the end all be all as far as mental health goes and what people need as far as healing, but I wanted to provide something that naturally brings people joy, something that can help with stress relief and relaxation. I think simply lighting a candle can be relaxing for folks, whether that's, when they come home, while they're taking a bath or meditating and things like that. So that's why I started my business, to provide a product to kind of start the conversation around mental health, especially as an entrepreneur of color.
Awesome. And Julie, you're you're doing similar things, but your product's more of a service than a tangible item. So can you go into that a little bit more? Like, what made you want to start your practice and focus with the individuals you focus on? And how did you decide to do an intangible versus a tangible service, if that makes sense?
I did. I think one of my, the ways I show love is through acts of service. And I found that every single job I've had, every single thing I've done, I have infused human services into that work. So, for example, I'm a licensed real estate broker in the state of Colorado, and I found that every single person I worked with was a person who nobody else would hang in there with. They were typically lower on the socioeconomic ladder, may have had credit issues or what have you. And I just would hang in there with them, do the things that needed to be done to make it happen, whether it be 3 years or 4 years or whatever, where a lot of people won't hang in with you that long. And so I found that through everything I was doing, that people would come back a lot of times and say, you didn't know it, but I was really, really having a really hard time at that time, and what you did for me was invaluable. And so I just have found that with every type of work I've done, I have infused social work. So I decided that one of the best ways that I could help people within the mental health community was to make it a mind, body, soul type of work. And even if a person cannot go through a medical insurance or mental health insurance or whatever, I wanted to make myself available to people. And so I do that. I do a lot of pro bono. I do a lot of sliding scales. I'm private pay. And so, even during this time with the pandemic going on, I am hosting calls and presentations and offering my time to students who have been their world has been shifted upside down. A lot of the social work and human services students are in the middle of a field, and they've been displaced from that. And so just whatever I can do to help someone else feel loved is probably what I would say is my life's mission, is that I don't want anyone to feel unworthy. And I know that we all have just areas in our life that are exacerbated by our mental health. It can be anxiety, it can be depression, it can be a plethora of diagnoses, or a person can be completely undiagnosed, but the fact still remains that people have mental health, and it's sometimes situational, sometimes circumstances. A lot of times it can be body chemistry. I mean, there can be a ton of things that play into how our mental health is doing at any given moment, but I just wanted to be a part of helping somebody else know that they're not alone in that.
Awesome. Thank you, all three of you. And something that I'm noticing is a couple of things. One, a lot of the work that I do with Kite and Dart is, especially being a business strategist with them, is working with entrepreneurs who want to give back to the community through their work. They want their job to be an extension, or their career or their business to be an extension of their values. And something I found when looking in the mirror is that the business that I have, or the businesses that I have, are a service, doing a service that I've personally needed. Have you all ever felt that way? And this is a question too for everybody in the chat as well. You can answer yes or no, but have you noticed as you become more intentional with your business, it's something that you personally have dealt with? I don't know. What about you guys, or you all?
Yeah, I would say absolutely true. There's a book called The 5 Love Languages, and I'm not sure if anyone here is familiar with it, but I highly suggest it. It's really good to know where your love languages are on a personal level, but also in on a relational level with children if you have them, and then also with your partners if you have a partner. And so finding out how you receive love will actually sort of lead you back to what you're doing in life. And I feel like that's such a huge part of what helps me to receive love, is to feel like someone cares. And I think that's what I give off. I feel like edifying someone else and lifting someone else up actually fills me up when I'm doing that. So I would say that you're absolutely spot on with that.
Elyse, Kim, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I would say I resonate with that. when I was first thinking about my business, which was when I was living in Missouri at the time, I thought about how there are not, one, a lot of Black candle businesses, but two, not a lot of folks talking about spirituality and things like that, because I tried to infuse like spirituality within my business, but I don't try to communicate it in a way that's like, oh my gosh, like if you're not spiritual, that people will veer away from it.
Yeah.
I don't want people to do that. I want people to feel welcome when it comes to my brand. And so when it comes to thinking of either other religions that people might resonate with, you don't see a lot of that within the Black community specifically. I think we're kind of shifted towards Christianity. And so that's kind of where the beginning stages of my business started as far as my thought process goes. So I felt like that was missing. And then it kind of evolved into something that's a little bit different and not as spiritual focused as when I first was planning it, but that's what I felt was missing. And so I tried to have like the meditation aspect while recognizing where that comes from, and being able to communicate that this can be a piece of self-care that people engage in that we don't really talk about within our community.
I love that. Elyse?
Yeah, I actually discovered the whole service aspect through doing free events. So with my first company with Love by Eco, I had the inflow events that I then, once I rebranded to Diwata, I still kept with it. And these inflow events are basically we're bringing together creative entrepreneurs, and now I'm kind of pivoting it even more to just bring in people who need a mindful session for 90 minutes once a month. And I recognize at the end of each session that it wasn't for me at all. It was for exactly the people who are showing up in that room and needing to not only just talk about mindfulness, but to actually do some of those practices. Because so much of the time it is about talking about it and not really offering the space besides yoga or meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And so many folks will think only about, oh, mindfulness is meditation. And for me, I'm trying to break down that barrier of like, no, it's literally you sending out an email when you're getting into the flow of it. It's you getting outside to walk around. It's all those little bits that really connect with us. And recognizing that the inflow sessions was so much bigger than me was by far one of the biggest journeys in this self-employment entrepreneurship world. And it made me just recognize that I'm in this work because it is bigger than me. What legacy do I want to leave behind?
Yeah. And I'm happy. I actually got to be a guest at your event, your inflow event. And that was something that was very interesting. And I'm happy that you bring up what is defining mindfulness. We kind of have a clearer picture on what mental health is, but not what mindfulness is. And you do automatically start thinking of yoga and meditation, which some people aren't into. And from what I learned from you and from that event was that, mindfulness, like you mentioned, could be in getting into the flow state is, how many of you on the line, and you could put it in the chat, have you ever experienced like runner's high or something like that, where you're just like in the zone and you're loving it and you love what you do? Lisa I think it's Leah just said yes. And oh yeah, Magenta says yes. And I've experienced this in my work, right? I'm doing something that I love. iPhone just said yes. I don't know who iPhone is. iPhone just said yes. But I've experienced this just, I do event coordination, and when I'm at an event and I'm in the zone, I forget to eat, or whatever. And so we talked about how there's a positive and a negative. You can have too much of something too that's good. Oh, iPhone is Mary. Hi, Mary. But yeah, so anyway, I'm happy you brought that up today to give a clear definition of like what is mindfulness, and that it doesn't have to look the way that society has made it to look. So thank you. And Kim, actually, I'm going to hop to you because we had a question. And before we jump into my next set of questions, I wanted to touch on this. So Justice actually asked, and talked about at our pre-meeting before we took the call, what is a resource that's been most helpful for your finances? And, as a woman of color, what roadblocks have you experienced?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second question. So I have not got into the process of investing and getting grants and things like that. So I have not experienced any roadblocks yet. However, I know that that's something that's going to happen, especially as investors and things and those type of companies and people do not invest in women and people of color as much, especially Black people. And then for the first question, I went through a business launch boot camp program through Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, and they have been the most helpful as far as my finances are concerned, because once I finished the program, they hooked me up with a company that helped me out with my accounting. And so, and they actually still help me out with my accounting and things like that. So that's been the most helpful for me. And then Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute is also a micro lender. And I took out a loan last year with them. And the cool thing is if you take out a loan with them and you finish paying that off, you can go for a higher amount, and then after that one an even higher amount up to $75,000. And I didn't know how great that was until this pandemic happened, because it affected my business and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my next loan payment. And they were like, hey, so for the next 3 months you don't have to pay and interest will not accrue. And so they've been super helpful. So if you're thinking about starting a business or you're looking to relaunch your business, I would check out Rocky Mountain Microfinance Institute, as their focus is to help underrepresented folks and, diversify the business world, especially here in Denver.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. And I was going to say, I know you weren't at the last event, and so that's also part of the reason why I wanted you to go first. Elyse and Julie, you were at the last Entrepreneurs of Color, and you remember Makisha, who runs Sister Biz, and I know you're familiar with her, Kim. She talked about our runway being much shorter, and how it is more difficult as a woman and as a person of color to secure money, and then have folks saying, well, we gave Johnny the same loan, or twice as much for his loan, and he's already reporting, why aren't you? And it's like, well, I had to go find the same amount of money from 6 different people. I haven't even gotten started yet. So I think that's awesome that there's a resource out there for us as entrepreneurs. Elyse, Julie, do you have anything to add on your experience with finances, and if you did loans, or if you kind of just did it on your own, or how did that work?
So I'm old. And, so I'm really old. And to be quite honest with you, I am not a business person. There is a difference between being an entrepreneur and being a business person. And so it would behoove all of you who are on this call to learn the difference and to figure out who you're going to find that can help you to take your entrepreneur self to the next level. So for me, everything I've done, I would consider myself a solopreneur. Everything I've done has been without loans, but it has come with a lot of challenges. There's been ups and downs. There's been time where I've had to take money from my own family to fund whatever it is that I'm trying to do in business. So one of the other things I learned was we're all on our own journey. And although, you know, you're taught a lot of times that it's what people see, you have to learn how to be classy without overspending. And so something that I'm really learning to do is keep my overhead very low. So for example, I have an office, but I don't rent my office by the month. I pay a flat fee monthly, which is, I would say, maybe a third of the cost of what an office is. And then because I have there's like 3 different levels that you can have in this setting that I'm in. When I use my office space, I schedule it and it's fully furnished. I use my office space. I meet with my clients. The atmosphere is conducive to a therapeutic environment. Everyone there is their own business, but we're all within the same type of business within healthcare and wellness and mental health. And so that keeps my overhead low. I also do a lot of telehealth. I've learned to do a lot of things via technology. And so a lot of people aren't really used to that. But because I was in a doctorate program when this really sort of became or got pushed to the forefront of things in medicine, I learned early on that that's something I need to get on top of. I also learned that I need a car, I need decent transportation, and at some point I'm going to get that one I want, but I'm going to be able to just walk in and pay for it. I'm not going to have payments on that. So I'm learning, even as old as I am, how to have what I need in life, have some of the things I want in life, but not get caught up in what someone else is doing and try to follow their trajectory, but to follow my own trajectory and to keep my overhead as low as possible.
So what I'm hearing is you're not trying to keep up with the Joneses. You're letting the
Pretty much.
Joneses do their own thing, and you're focused on what you can do and what's beneficial for you.
Yeah, and that came with age. I've always been sort of do your own thing person. But I used to sort of worry, like, oh my goodness, I'm in real estate. Are they going to want me as their realtor if I'm not driving, this or that? Or, you know, oh my goodness, what are people going to think if I don't have my own set dedicated office, which I used to have? And I wasted thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because the reality is, if you're not bringing in enough money to cover that and cover all of your expenses and still have some left over, you're overspending yourself. And so I don't have a lot of financial savvy, not a financial expert or anything like that. All of this has come just from trial and error and having to go through some things and just wisdom with age, quite frankly.
Elyse, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I actually this year was introduced to a financial advisor, but it was more a personal one, and recognizing that this personal does go into business as well, and how that just affects my personal finances as well. And for me, just like with Julie, I'm keeping all of my overhead super low. It's all e-commerce stuff. I have, my website is through Squarespace, so I'm not, it's just this free website. I'm using all of my classes through Eventbrite, so it's, and I'm, all the places that I had my courses physically here in Denver, they aligned with who I am as a brand. And the way that they did it was either per hour, or they would get half of the ticket sales that I would have, which to me as a woman of color, that was amazing, because some of their one of the places was charging less than $50 an hour, which is, in my eyes, for a 3-hour course, that was pretty, it was affordable. Some places were charging $300 an hour, and I couldn't, that's a barrier. And to me, I'm like, how can I make that right now? And so I've had to pivot, and now my classes are online, but now it's also the barrier now is how to get the supplies to my customers, because I no longer can have those supplies. And the supplies, again, is to just keep overhead really low and just kind of keep on checking from there.
Yeah. Well, and I was gonna, speaking of pivoting, I'm actually gonna kind of start heading towards the way of talking about COVID and, mental health and mindfulness and what its impact has been on us as entrepreneurs. I do definitely recognize that some folks are really struggling right now. And there are some folks who are actually going to do really well just based off of what their business and service was. That's just the way it is. And so with looking at that, and you all talked about pivoting, or you had mentioned pivoting, Elyse. What, and Julie, I think you touched on it a little bit. I would love to hear more from Kim too. What all have you all done with, COVID-19 in order to pivot your business to stay relevant? What's going on there?
I'm sorry, who did you?
Oh, I was saying with COVID-19, like you had mentioned, you've moved more so to telehealth and
Yeah.
being online. So I was asking, Kim and Elyse and you, what other things have you had to think about and strategize with your business quickly?
Okay, so yeah, there's been a lot because we have so many rules and regulations that we're governed by as licensed clinicians. There's been a lot of things to take into account. Now, in 2015, I jumped on this telehealth piece because, for one, I just saw the value in it, but also I'm an introvert, and so I also knew with the type of work that I was looking to do and the type of clients that I was looking to service, that online would work really well for them a lot of the times too. So one of the things that I did was I got myself trained for telehealth a while back. And in addition to that, I was in technology and social work in my doctorate program. And so I was able to learn a lot through that as well. What that has done is it has made it where I haven't had to really switch anything except for sending out an email and putting out messages to everybody, letting them know that if you are an in-person, person-to-person client, we will not be meeting through May 31st, and then it will be reassessed. And here is my login. You don't have to download an app. If you need me to walk it through with you, I'm more than happy to do that. We can even do a test session. But really just letting people know that I'm still here, I'm still available for them, and this is the venue in which we are going to do it on. It's really not an option at this point if people are wanting to meet. So that's one thing. The other thing is so someone had asked a question, and I felt like it was my answer for it is not being afraid to do what you have to do, not only with the COVID-19 and the way the economic system is right now, but just in general. There are ebbs and flows and ups and downs in business. And sometimes you got to diversify yourself. You might have this really passionate heart for one thing, but if it's not doing very well, don't throw in the towel, don't give it up, work on that, but find a way to diversify yourself so that you can bring in some sort of income in another way. So that's something that I just wanted to point out for people, is to make sure that they understand it. You're not a failure if your business is going up and down, or you're not making any money, or, you know, you're starting to really take off and you're doing really well, and then all of a sudden something like this happens. This is life. And so I just want to really make sure that everybody knows that it is okay for you to have those times where things are up and down in your business. And just making sure that you're planning ahead. Sometimes we can, and sometimes we're completely taken off guard by things that come along, and we just have to roll with those punches.
Awesome. Elyse or Kim, would you like to add?
Yeah, so I'll be brief here. I do want to second that. I think that's a really great point that Julie made as far as business and it ebbing and flowing. And I feel like that's kind of where I'm at still as a new business, with things going really well, or this year has been different than last year in that I had all these events planned and all these people coming to me and asking if I could be a part of their event and table at their event and be a vendor at the beginning of March. And then boom, like all these events were now getting canceled. And so I was like, okay, how do I work with that? So I haven't had to pivot too much because my business has not reached a point where it's been at a constant. And so it's just been like this kind of. And so I'm just ebbing and flowing with that. But I've continue to do what I've already been doing, which is give stress relief tips, different intentions, let people know what I'm doing as well, so they know that I'm not only talking about these mindfulness practices, but engaging with them as well in order for people to kind of pick and choose what works for them. And so I haven't really had to pivot too much. Yeah.
I'm going to ride that train of what Julie said. I really appreciate how you talked about the ebbs and flows of business, because in this pandemic, I mean, there are small businesses who are literally had to lay off all their people and don't even know how they're just going to put food on their own table. So I'm actually really, really thankful that I've been able to still work from home. I have been able to take my events online, which was almost seamless, and this is going to be the new normal. So it's almost like I'm actually, as sad as it is, this is where we are. And if businesses aren't going online, I don't know how far they'll go. And for me, I've had to really figure out what are the different types of incomes within my own business. So not only will I offer group and private lessons in, like, not in person, but virtual sessions live, I will also be filming my online courses that again will be paid for, so that way it's a passive income. So yes, there'll be the initial setup, but because I'm not going to have a videographer, one, I don't have the funds for that, and two, I actually want to show kind of how gritty this startup is. I think we as a society are, again, keeping up with the, and I guess nowadays, Kardashians. And we're recognizing that this what am I trying to say? I don't even know.
I get like overproduced, like
Yes,
show
that just
overdone.
And so to me, I'm like, I'm just gonna film it on my phone. I have my own little tripod, and I'm just gonna teach people how to knit. And something that I recognize is I'm bringing my own personality to it. And if you try to find knitting videos, online courses, you don't find a lot of Filipino women. I mean, yes, we can talk about, the entrepreneurs of color, but Asian women, Filipino women are not even in the conversation. And so for me, I am representing my own self and recognizing that we're all going through this hardship together. And another avenue is I was connecting with a local organization called Fancy Tiger Crafts, and we were actually going to do a Friday night combos that was going to be a paid event. It was a small event, $20, But if 50 people came, $20, that kind of adds up. I would give the funds part to the people who are in the panel. And it was just going to be another community event. So another point of avenue. And now I'm in the talks with them to have them still promote it because they have such a wide audience, and it still be a virtual online meetup. And it's one of those things where I am, it is about, okay, here we are. I'm not going to push against it, but what are the different places that we can do? And I guess my biggest concern now is my online courses of how to get my clients at a certain date to have their products, because Amazon is taking a month, and the local supplier that I had with Fancy Tiger Crafts, they're down to a skeletal staff, and they're saying that they can't do their shipments enough in time because they're known internationally. So it's again, how do I bring this practice to the people who really need it? Because I know for me, knitting is helping me get through the hour sometimes. So for the people who are just like, I just need to get off my screen, but I don't know how to knit, but I want to. So I think for me, that's the biggest challenge right now.
And I just want to say too, I do see questions coming through. I'm going to save them for the end, just because I have a couple more to get through before we do more Q&A from the audience. But I had a question too. Social distancing. It's a fancy word for quarantine, in my opinion. And there's a lot in the sense of me. I've personally been working on my mindfulness. I actually did start meditating, and I did like a 21 day challenge. And I noticed that the individuals around me, because they're not doing the work as well, it's been very tumultuous, especially because we're now all stuck in the same building together. I love them, but you get what I'm saying. So do you think that COVID-19 has kind of supercharged the need for mindfulness and mental health work? What are your thoughts around that? And if so, how would you suggest someone go about, what tips and tricks would you suggest to someone? I'll have Kim start. Oh, or Julie was trying to talk. She's on. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Julie.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
Let Kim talk first.
Okay, go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, so I definitely do think that it has supercharged, like you said, the need for these things. And I say that because there are a lot of folks who are inside who have not been inside with themselves for this long before, and so they're dealing with things and thinking about things that maybe they were trying to push to the side, or you have folks who are now out of a job, and so what does that look like for them as they try to navigate employment, especially since not every single service or the folks that we pay have decided to say, hey, actually, you don't have to pay us for this month or next month. Bills are still coming through for a lot of folks. So I think that it has brought the need for self-care practices, for mindfulness, for mental health practices to the forefront as people are trying to work through all of these things. For me, it's been interesting because I have not been as stressed as I usually am. And I saw a tweet recently that said, this person was talking about how they went to go see their therapist, and they were talking about how they were not as stressed as they feel like they should be. And their therapist was like, well, that's because you're used to chaos. chaos. And so I think that's kind of where I am right now. Whereas my life, there's so many things that I've been through, so many things that I have battled that have been chaotic, that have been traumatic, that I'm kind of at home with this. And so I have not been as stressed. And then at the end of the day, because I tend to stress myself out a lot, one thing I'm trying to tell myself and others is to just control what you can and kind of let go of what you can't. Because the more that you try to control what you're unable to control, that's going to stress you out more. Kind of like what you were saying, Sydney, before this all started, like it's going to kind of suppress your immune system and then make it to where you're more likely to end up getting COVID-19 coronavirus. As mentioned. And so I try to think about not necessarily social distancing, but physical distancing, because that's mostly what it is. And let people know, like, hey, there's still ways that you can be social. And we've seen that people have gotten creative with video call. You know, someone that I know recently had their birthday virtually, so they invited folks to join in with them. And so I think people are definitely getting creative during this time, and there are a lot of people that are still struggling. So what does that look like for those folks? So I try to stress the control what you can, let go of what you can't, and that's definitely easier said than done. And I want to recognize my privilege in that as someone who still has the ability to work from home at the moment.
Well said. Elyse, Dr. Clock, do you have any other tips that you could give to folks?
Yeah, actually, everything that Kim said was spot on. One of the things that I find is, even with myself, I've been eerily calm for a great part of this. And I think it's because, for one thing, individuals, depending upon what traumas they have experienced from childhood through their current life, are on a continuum. So whatever traumas you experience at any given time, it's really within you. It's almost like our body keeps score. There's actually a book by a amazing doctor, and where he goes into all of that, and that's very much true. But when you're talking about women or men, people of color, we tend to experience traumas on such a regular basis that for us, we are almost at a heightened level of fight, flight, or flee a lot of times, and don't even realize it. So there's chemicals that are in our body whenever something triggers that. And a lot of times we don't even recognize that those chemicals are flowing through our body. The half-life of fight or flight chemicals is 13 hours. For a lot of people, by the time they're getting ready to come down off of those chemicals, something else is going on, if not the same thing. So one of the things that has happened for us who are really calm, we're actually having a trauma response to what's going on with the COVID-19. And it's, a lot of people are like, wow, you know, this is really weird. I'm not feeling how I should feel. I am not all stressed out and panicky. And that may come. So I'm telling people, if you are feeling extremely calm in the middle of this storm and you all of a sudden start to have a meltdown, that's not necessarily abnormal, but you do need to seek treatment. You do need to seek help. So one of the things that I'm also telling people is that social distancing, to me, means you need to stay home as much as possible. Because I'm old, and so I think about things a lot differently. I don't know what 6 feet is going to do for you. I'm going to be really honest. It can be slightly helpful, I think, and I think if that's the best that you can do, that's great. But stay away from other people physically as much as possible, and connect with them in other ways. As Kim said, she saw people having virtual meetings, virtual parties. I know I attended a virtual club for 3 days in a row, and it was lit. And my kids threw a virtual birthday party for me on the 23rd. And so that was amazing. And so there are ways that you can still connect with people. One of the things I want everyone on this line to do is make a list of 2 or 3 people a day that you can shoot a text to. I mean, it takes 5 minutes to ask somebody else how they're doing. Do they need anything? You know, just letting people know you're there a lot of times can be very helpful. I'm also going to pass off to Sydney a list of emergency numbers, suicide hotline numbers, because the reality is we need to be talking about these things. There's a lot of us who struggle with anxiety and depression, and it doesn't matter what business we're in. It doesn't really, there is no particular person that this fits. It fits us all, and it can fit any one of us. And so I'm going to pass some information off to her about that. And I want you all to have that for yourself, but also if you come across somebody else. Something I've been telling people to do is progressive muscle relaxation, where they like once a day get in a chair, close their eyes, and literally move from the top of their head to the bottoms of their feet, where they tense up a muscle, hold it for a few seconds, and then release it, and then move on to the next. Like, take that self-care time for you to do that. I've been talking to people and telling them, you know, go outside for a few minutes while it's been warm in Colorado, and take your shoes off. And Sydney calls it earthing. I didn't even know that's what it was called. I call it grounding. And put your feet on the ground and just be there for a few minutes. I think also being more aware of your 5 senses. Those are just senses that you are born with. And I know for some people, they may or may not have all of those 5 senses, but whatever senses that they do have, I encourage you to use those. And that be, if you're feeling stressed out and your mind is racing, I'm gonna need you to look at 5 things. Find 5 things in that room that are red. If you are, you know, feeling like you're panicky and you're having a hard time controlling your breathing, there are even on Facebook, I've seen where it'll help you to control your breathing, taking deep breaths in, deep belly breaths, and then blowing it out like you're blowing out a candle. These are things and tools that you can use at home. Somebody mentioned keeping a schedule. I feel like earlier, and it might have been on another call that I was on, so forgive me if it wasn't this one, but figuring out what projects you have that you need to do, and pick one of them. And don't allow it to stress you out, but make a plan. It'll give you something to look forward to, and it'll also help you to feel a sense of accomplishment. And don't try to do too much. Like, I know I've been a student for the last 11 years. My entire house needs help. But what I have finally come to think, I need to pick 2 spaces and use those, and clear those out and work on those. So finding things that you can do to help yourself and help someone else through this, I think is huge. And I've talked enough, so I'm gonna let someone else talk now.
Thank you. And before Elyse gets to respond, I actually am going to take a second to pause, because I realize that we are running a little bit over, and I know my panelists have time to stay on a little bit longer, but some of the participants might not. So before we have them jet, I want to actually put out there on the chat, if you all don't mind clicking on the feedback form. And so really quick, open that up with me. And I'm talking to the participants out there too. This feedback form is really important because, one, it helps me to know how to improve upon the events. This is our first time doing a virtual panel discussion. And so if you saw something that you think could be improved upon or something you really liked, please mention that. Also, from what you're hearing during this talk, I'm going to ask you to please say what you could take forward into your own life and utilize, whether it's personally or within business. I think it's so important for us to claim and proclaim and say, this is something that I learned and I'm going to do it. And then how are you going to carry that forward? What might be a roadblock for you to do that, right? And then also, if you want to connect with myself, I do own a business. I'm a retreat coordinator and an event. I do event coordination and travel coordination. I have a retreat business event tomorrow. If that's something you're interested in, you can select to talk to me and I'll get you that information. If you want to connect with Kim, Elyse, or Dr. Clockston, we'll make sure that happens. If you want to learn more about the free awesome workshops that Kite and Dart Group does, and some of our business strategy tools that we have with Kite and Dart Group, you can all select all of that. So I wanted to take the time to just let everybody know that that form is available, to please fill it out, because it helps us with future events and to know what's relevant and what's not. So thank you. And Elyse, I'm going to let you jump in and finish this question. But while folks are kind of working on the form too, I wanted to ask you, before you finish the question, one last thing. For others who are interested in pursuing, a career within, therapeutic modalities, or working with mindfulness, either products or services, what would be your advice to them? So I'm going to let Elyse wrap up the last question, and then that's going to be my final question before we go into guest questions.
So I'm answering that current question?
Yeah, the current question. So what kind of tips and tricks, if you have any additional ones, would you add towards people being mindful in what they're doing?
Dr. Julie pinpointed a lot of the things that I'm actually already doing, so I actually recently learned yes, we want to social distance, but we also want to do distant socializing. So I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And I'm finding that these virtual sessions is amazing. And it's amazing because I really enjoy not only getting together with like old and new friends, but I'm also recognizing that through my work, hosting these types of sessions is a key component to not only keeping your brand awareness, but also just keeping y'all sane. Because at least for me, I have my cat and my partner, and I don't get to see my partner all day because thankfully they do get to go to work. I'm thankful for that. But right now we are social distancing because he has potentially been exposed. So we've just been really living separate lives, which is its own thing. But recognizing that having these types of conferences and just seeing them, yes, it's great to hear someone's voice, but there's something about if you can see the person that you're talking with, I just feel connected even more. And so for me, it's being able to, I don't know, find these online events that you can, one, expand your circle while you're isolated, and two, if you have some type of form to get together with your friends or your family, do it in this modality because this is beautiful. Another key component is movement. I know for me, being at home all day, I'm just like, I can stand, thankfully, at my desk, but I need to actually move. And those like club events that are happening on IG right now is a huge thing. And I'm actually going to be starting tomorrow. I'm going to start hosting an IG live for 20 minutes around 5 p.m. And I'm going to put on some music. I'm going to get my hula hoop, and I'm going to ask the people to just come on and move with me. Whatever form they choose, I just want them for 20 minutes to just like dance with me, because right now we just need to get back in our bodies. And for 20 minutes, that's not a huge thing. And I don't get to see you. You can say hi, but for me, it's another way for me to give back to my community, but to also just remind ourselves like, hey, this is a serious thing, but we don't have to be serious all the time. And let's just groove just a little bit.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I love that. And I know that's something so just so everyone's aware too, there is a Entrepreneurs of Color Facebook group that I've started because of the fact that this event was supposed to be an opportunity for networking. And I realize you can't necessarily get that on a Zoom call, especially when you're in a large group. So that's going to be a great tool to actually, like, you know, say who you are and what you do. And I'm doing a 21-day challenge to fight overwhelm on there. So just like the thought of, you know, doing that social dance party on Instagram Live, there's tons of resources out there to help yourself get plugged in, and to stay focused. That's how I personally keep myself sane currently, is by staying focused on something, but not taking on too much at the same time, like Dr. Clockston was saying, you know, finding that balance. So, yeah. Well, to my last question, before we go into any of our participant questions, what advice would you give to someone who wants to start a business around mental health and mindfulness? You know, if there's any students out there watching or any entrepreneurs who feel like it's in their heart to do something like what you're all doing, what would you tell them?
Is it for anyone?
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say not everybody at once.
Well, basically, I would tell them to find somebody who's in the industry and talk to them. Find out, like, what do they do? Also, think about, like, what type of, there's a broad range of things you can do within mental health. There's art therapy. You know, where's your passion? Are you into narrative therapy? Are you into body movement therapy or candles, as Kim is, or knitting, as Elyse is? Like, where's your passion? And then use that and learn what therapeutic modalities fit with that and how you can best help your individuals with healing. You're not gonna heal them. They're gonna heal themselves. But how can you hold space for them so that they can heal themselves? And healing, the other thing with that is not always something that's a start and finish. For me, healing is gonna be a lifetime. I will always be on a journey towards healing. And so I think that's really important to say. Also, because I am licensed and I have had a ton of years of education, I highly, highly, highly recommend that whatever an individual is going to do, that they set out with the intent to do no harm. And so they educate themselves in whatever their craft is, whatever their discipline is. If they're going to do mental health, specifically when we're talking about people who may really have significant mental health diagnoses, or maybe undiagnosed but have significant symptoms, please, please, please refer to somebody who has the licensing, who has the knowledge, who has the understanding. And don't be afraid to reach out to people and to consult with other people who are in your industry. That would probably be some of the biggest things that I would say that a person could do if they're looking to get involved. They're more than willing to reach out to me at any time. They can send me an email and I'll talk to them one-on-one. And just really put yourself out there. Everyone has something that they can give to someone else. It may not be for a person full time, and that's okay. But everybody has something within themselves that they can share with someone else to help them.
Thank you. Kim, Elyse, you want to add something? Any final thoughts, advice?
Yeah, I pretty much second everything that Julie said, especially that last part as far as like educating yourself. So I received a certificate in mindfulness from University of Colorado Springs, and then I'm working right now. I don't know if y'all have seen it. It's been like really popular. through the internet is a class from Yale called The Science of Wellbeing. And so it's a free course. And so I'm taking that, and I paid to get the certificate, while also recognizing that I am not a licensed mental health therapist. And so I do my best to provide what I'm able, and making sure I provide resources if someone comes to me and it's beyond my expertise.
Awesome. And I'm happy you mentioned that too. Being a resource to your community, you know, sometimes there have been many times where I've met entrepreneurs where they are not able to help me with something, and I'll be like, oh, can you refer somebody? And they're like, no. And then that's actually made me not want to ever work with them again. And I don't know if anybody else has ever felt that way. You can say in the chat box if you have or haven't, but I feel like I want to work with someone who collaborates with their community and with others. So I appreciate you saying that. And can you, Kim, send me the information for the course that you did through Yale? And
So,
awesome. Thank you. All right, Elyse, any final thoughts before we see if anyone has questions?
Yeah, as you are educating yourself and exploring the realms of mental health and mindfulness, to also be aware that you yourself can have the burnout, and sometimes really listen to yourself of the advice that you give. Sometimes it's good for you to take that as well, and just to recognize, like, oh, I've been giving such great advice about self-care and mental health, but I haven't done anything for myself. And it's about taking the step back and really listening to your body, listen to if you're tired. We are in very uncertain times, and I know a lot of people are just like, just get up and go. And I mean, for me, I'm taking it literally 1 hour at a time. I check in. Is this what I want to do? Do I want to take a nap? Do I want to answer this email? And there are times when I'm just like, nah. And I let myself be there, because this is my own grieving process of what is happening to our society. And I honestly think it's just really listening to your own body as you're going through this whole process. Yeah, that's what I got.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all to our panelists. I really appreciate your time today, and for you all just being stewards to the community and making a difference in your own unique way. Like I said, I strongly believe that we each have something special to give to the world. And, you know, if we all work together, we can achieve, you know, doing that and making the world a better place. So thank you. And before we hop off, I just want to see if there's any other questions. I'm also going to post up here. You all should see my screen now, and it's showing everybody's like handle for Facebook and Instagram. You probably could Google everyone as well. So there's access to that. And then I'm just going to highlight an event. This is a pop-up event that Magenta Freeman and I are going to be doing, Entrepreneurs of Color. And it's going to showcase free tools for business success, and how you can use for free G Suite online outside of just Google Docs, how you can really utilize that to help set up systems for your business online. So we thought that would be very timely to start doing now instead of waiting until the end of the month when we originally had scheduled. Outside of that, let me see if there's any questions. I don't know. Karen, would you be able to hop on? Because I'm sharing my screen and I can't see the question box.
Yeah. There were a couple from Justice earlier. He hopped off. But other than that, I don't think so. Wait, sorry, I'm looking. The financial ones were answered.
There was a question I saw come up for, did you say Justice? It briefly flashed on my screen, and I think he had to dip out, but if we could still answer it, maybe he can look at the recording.
Yes. So are you all ready for this? I found it.
Okay, good, because I lost it now. I'm like, I can't find it.
Do you use financial modeling? And how do you set a strategy? Okay, just curious about how you set strategy without considering financial. What metrics? So essentially I'm taking he's a very financial minded person. He's not on the call anymore, but he's just asking like, how do you build your strategies and look at the financial possibilities and outcome? Almost like a business plan. Like your business plan is supposed to not just highlight what the business is, but also financially how you're going to make money. So when you're pivoting or making changes, what do you do to look at your finances?
So that's why it's important to recognize if you're not a business person, like I'm not. So I don't know how it's worked out for me 100 years, but I always
You're not 100.
like decide this is what I want to do and then scale down to make it fit. I don't know if what I just said makes sense. So if I want to do something, I don't really look, if I looked at finances, and not that people shouldn't, but if I looked at finances, I wouldn't see ways in which I could do the things I do a lot of times. And so what I have found that works for me is, yes, I do need a financial advisor. I do need finances. And I do need a business person who can guide me because I'm not one. But I can't let that stop my entrepreneurial spirit or my entrepreneurial mind. There are things that will come to you and you will want to do them in business. And it's like, how can I make this happen? What I do applaud him on is for asking this, because it can keep you very stagnant or in a box if you don't have a way to push beyond that. And so I think having a business advisor or a coach or a financial advisor is of utmost importance if you're looking to grow your business, because otherwise you can start a business and you might survive in it, but it will be very boxed in my opinion.
So grow stagnant, essentially. Go ahead, Kim.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with that. I think one thing that they talked a lot about through my business program is knowing your numbers. So I didn't really focus too much on my numbers and figuring out how to scale my business for the first year. And so I'm heading into my second year where I'm now starting to look at my numbers and trying to see what those things are communicating to me in order to set up my key performance indicators. And so I think that before you really focus on your numbers, you need to have numbers in general. So you need to like kind of go through maybe after a year, depending on what your business is, because that might not necessarily be congruent to that, but after a year, having those numbers. So like I did events, so now I got to go back and look at, okay, how long was I there? How much did I sell? What was the profit after accounting for the cost that it took to do the event? So I'm looking at those things now, but I will just put out there that it is important for you to know your numbers.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that. I mean, knowing your numbers is a key component of figuring out what the next step is. But along with what Dr. Clockston said, it's as an entrepreneur, as a creative entrepreneur, sometimes the ideas will come first for me. And then it's like, okay, well then how will I make that happen? And for me, I think for me personally, that is one of my skills that I have, is just, it's almost seeing like the bigger picture, but then also knowing, okay, well, how will I get to that step? Because so many folks will just have the big ideas and they're so big, but they just don't know how to get there. And it's, it's a cloud. It's like, if you don't know how to get there, it'll never happen. And I think also in this journey of entrepreneurship, it's hard to kind of break down those ideas when if there's no roots to them, then unfortunately it may not be for you for right now. And also just recognizing what needs to be shelved. There are sometimes those big ideas, but it's like, okay, well, maybe not within the next 5 years, but after that hurdle I can get there. And for me, I mean, I am not a numbers person, but I understand why numbers are so important, and not being able to grow forward without understanding where you are is just a huge element to being able to scale, if that is what you want to do.
I think, and I appreciate everything that all three of you had said. And in my opinion, I definitely feel like, having a business mentor, strategist, coach is important. And then also having someone who is an actual financial advisor within business is also important. And they're not synonymous. A lot of times people think like, if I work with someone who knows about finances, they'll be the answer to helping me with my business. Or if I work with just a business coach, they'll be the answer to helping me with my business. And really, if you're not a numbers person and that's not your forte, you do need to seek help in that area. And something that on the Entrepreneurs of Color Facebook group that I'll be posting throughout is different resources like, now we know about the Rocky Mountain Microfinancing group. And then there's also like CASA, not CASA that you're familiar with for college, but CASA is actually a center that does provide for business owners all of these amazing resources down to like free legal aid for business owners. So I'll be posting some of their information as well in the group. But really, if you can't necessarily, if you're a startup especially, afford the services, figuring out where you can get the information and getting it and using it. And I think that's part of our struggle being entrepreneurs of color, is that, we don't necessarily have the same access or funding, right, that someone else might necessarily have when they're first starting their business. And so it's up to us to kind of do a little bit more rooting around and digging to find what we need. But there are resources out there for us.
Sydney, you're on mute. I can't hear you.
There was one more question, and then I think we're gonna call it quits. It was from Magenta, and she was asking, so Governor Polis just called a statewide homestay for the whole state. Any final thoughts about that? I know we talked about it quite a bit, but in the importance of, social distancing, or not, what did you all call it? Spacing, like social or not physical distancing. Yeah. Any other thoughts around it or?
Yeah, I really want people to know that now is not the time to be afraid to ask for help. Some people were literally making it paycheck to paycheck before, and it doesn't matter what they showed the world. They might look like this great business person, and but they might have literally been hanging by a thread financially. And even if they weren't, and their income stops significantly, it can throw things into a tailspin. So the first thing I want to tell people is don't be ashamed to reach out for resources and help. Do you need food? Do you need medical? What do you need? Figuring out what agencies and organizations you can get yourself on the sign up for those things for is critical. And reaching out and asking other people, hey, how are you doing? Do you have food? What do you need? Because sometimes people are ashamed and they will not say what they need. You can do that in a more confidential manner, like sending someone a Facebook message or a text message or a phone call or something like that, but reaching out and connecting to people. And I can even get a list together for you, Sydney, to post of in Colorado, different social services platforms that they can sign up on online, and they don't even have to go in and see anybody.
Yeah, please.
Also, there's agencies and organizations that I've worked at, like Jewish Family Service, that will service anyone. They don't ask for you to be any age or ethnicity. You don't have to be any race or religion. And they don't ask if you're documented or not. And so you can literally go there, and I think they're probably doing curbside at this point with the COVID issue, but you can get food from the pantry, and also toiletries, like things people don't think of, toothpaste, diapers for babies, baby wipes, just different things that you need to function in your daily life. And knowing that this is gonna end at some point, we don't know when, and I think that that's one of the hardest parts, is that this is almost like the boogeyman. We don't know where it is, who's got it, who doesn't have it, what surface it's on, and it can really freak you out. And so knowing that at some point this is going to end, it's not to take anything away from how bad it is, but knowing that it's not going to be forever, and that it's okay to need help during this time or any time in your life, is something I want to leave people with.
Awesome.
Yeah, I also thank you for that. I really appreciate it. It has been really hard to just kind of get through these days and know that it's temporary. You know, like all of our emotions right now are just, they're temporary, but they're real. Something else that I've learned is calling your actual your landlord, if you have a house, your mortgage company, personally just taking it upon yourself to call the bills and the whatnot, because a lot of the times if they hear from you and they hear that you are struggling, they will let you, maybe they won't accrue, the interest rates, or maybe they won't add on that extra, penalty fee. I know for some mortgage companies, if it is a private one, they'll listen. They're understanding, like, we are really at a standstill, and I think what's hurting people is the fact that they can't be standing still. They have bills to pay, and recognizing if they just reach out, they're understanding what's happening with the world. Like, this is happening worldwide, where people are not being able to pay their bills, and that should be, I honestly think, the last thing on people's mind. I'm like, yo, get toilet paper. That's a real thing. And I'm like, if people can't even get toilet paper, they should not be worrying about their bills. And so just reaching out to the resources that I'll also look into those as well. Dr. Clockston, thank you. But really reaching out to the people that, you have your bills owed to. I think even the student payment loans, they're kind of giving a halt on that for certain people. But just recognizing that we're all in this together. We're experiencing it all differently, but we'll get through this somehow. Just stay healthy and stay home.
On that note, oh, sorry, Kim, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, I reiterate what they both said, and thank you all for being here.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. We are at 6 o'clock, so we're going to cut off. This was a really great discussion, and I do appreciate. So if we could get a round of applause for our, speakers today, our panelists. I appreciate you. Thank you, Karen, for your support also with the chat and connecting with people. And I hope you all stay, blessed and healthy and fed, because I like food. So I'll end there. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I joined in late, but I got to hear some.
Good. I saw. How is it going, Rebecca?
going great. Was on my way back from the office because since it's a total shutdown, I had to run to the office and get whatever I needed to work from home. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you hopping on when you did.
thank you. I will look at the recording if you share that.
I will be sure. Yes.